Okay, so Victor, you coined the term Village 3.0. Is that correct? I think it was you and Anton. Well, let's kind of trace back to how this all began. Maybe actually that's,
So
maybe,
for me, actually, I don't really feel like the ideas that whether Village 3.0 or the different parts of it are ideas that I have or that I came up with. I really feel like I'm channeling the zeitgeist. I see the flow of events in the world, of changes, of different developments, different people trying things, and I see myself channeling. Sometimes maybe, I'm able to see a little bit further ahead of what some people are looking at, or I think what Village 3.0 is very much is a bringing together of many disparate ideas which haven't been brought together before. So if there's anything original, it's seeing how different new paradigms, new trends come together or could be brought together around the idea of building a new kind of a village.
definitely.
And the name, yes, I mean, it came out of conversations with many people. It is actually meant to be somewhat humorous. So this 3.0, 2.0, the numbering, and it is also, it's meant to be humorous, and it's also meant to make people think, because bringing together an old word such as village and this new numbering of version numbers which comes from computer software is actually supposed to invoke this sort of clash of ideas, and thus provoke people to think and discuss of what this might actually be.
Interesting. Maybe the village is kind of the right unit to pull together all of these changes that are occurring, whether it's technology, cultural. What do you think about that? Maybe because you're saying that things are rapidly changing so much.
Yes,
Maybe that's the way to
very,
kind of.
very, very much so. I really, we have the trends in reinventing learning, new ways of looking at health, reinventing how we make a living, and all of that. And if you look at, I mean, most people realize that there's many changes that need to happen in the world, and there's different ideas on what those changes need to be. But if you look at the global scale, unless you're a multi-billionaire, for most of us, thinking about changing something on a global scale is overwhelming. Even at a country scale or a city scale, yes, if you work hard, you can make an impact on some small silver of policy, or if you make a big movement, you can have a small impact on this, on some a big impact on a small amount of people's lives. But actually trying to redesign all of global human society, or all of a country, or even all of a city, is, if you really think about it, it's just too many people, too many variables, too many different forces. It's really realistically impossible.
Yeah.
However, if you look at the scale of a village, which let's say is 30 to 100, 150 people, it suddenly becomes, that's a small to mid-sized company. It becomes much more realistic to get people who are really interested in radically changing large parts of their lives. It just seems a much more manageable and imaginable. It's at the scale where we can still function largely through human relationships, not rules, laws, regulations. So yeah, it's a scale which seems much more manageable to experiment with.
Very good. Thinking about billionaires too, I imagine that they're still constrained in the same way. Even if they can reach beyond their village, they still have to create a village of intellectuals, people that they trust, everybody that they went to Stanford with, whatever it is, in order to get things done, right? They still have those 100, 200 people that are at their core, but then they can reach beyond, right? So they're still constrained. I think we're all at this kind of at first.
So yes, of course, even billionaires have limitations, but they might they might feel like they have a chance to really change something at the world scale. But actually, watching, I come from the technology world, and for 20, 30 years now, I've been watching changes first through computers, then the internet, and then future ways of the internet. And I've realized that quite a long time ago, at least by the scale of my life, maybe even in the mid 20th century, we reached a point where our limitation in progress was not technological, but human. There's only so much technology that we can incorporate and adopt in our lives. So again, creating human change at a massive city, country, global scale is a huge challenge to get people to change the way they live their lives, the way people think. At the scale of a village, especially when you start with being clear of what is this new life, these new values that you want to create, and gathering people around it who are really willing and interested in changing their lives and living this new way, I think it's much more feasible.
Cool. Okay. How about, okay, I'm scribbling a couple questions here. How about did you have a Eureka moment with Village 3.0 when you decided that, it was, so you lived in Tokyo, London, these were your main places for the last 15 years?
Between Tokyo and London, I lived in Kamakura, which is a small town about an hour and a half outside of Tokyo. It's kind of like, I don't know, the Tokyo's Greenwich, or even like Oxford, Cambridge. It's a beautiful little town outside of Tokyo, but still within commuting distance, kind of. I had a 10-minute walk to the nearby hills, 15-minute bicycle ride to the sea. It really was paradise. But I realized that, I didn't have a local community there. I didn't have a wife at the time. So I realized that if I'm to move out of the city and to really have a fully satisfying, fulfilled life, I had to do it together with my wife and together with a community of friends. So I think, it's for me, it's been coming in layers. And as the interesting thing is, as I study and as I look at the world, I look at the problems around me, everything points that, at least for me, and I think for many people like me, the answer is creating this new kind of a village. We live in a worldwide epic of loneliness, of depression and other mental health problems. I struggled with depression and happiness and all kinds of mental health problems for a good chunk of my life too. And I think over time I came to realize that it wasn't actually me. I was just more sensitive, and I'm really the kind of person that needs to live in a community, in a supportive community, in a natural environment. And this wasn't where I grew up. I had a wonderful childhood and all of that. My parents loved me, so no complaints there. But still, the extended family wasn't quite around us. We didn't live in a natural environment. And those kinds of things weighed on my mental health.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so it came in layers. Great. No Eureka moment. So how about...
You could say that my whole life, it's a progression of a slowly growing Eureka moment.
Nice.
And, every time I meet somebody, like when we met, I saw your project, I was like, wow, somebody else is thinking along the same lines as me, So this is also for me very important. Every time I meet a person like you or all the other people that are meeting and signing up, we're like, wow, this is a cool idea. We're signing up this. It's, to me, it's increases my Eureka moment of, I'm not crazy. This is not just, some crazy fantasy. There really are a lot of people who like this idea and are thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of like, I do like the wave, kind of thinking of things in waves, right? So maybe you were kind of a surfer out all by yourself, and then suddenly you saw a couple of people popping up around and you're like, they also see there's a wave coming here. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think talking about, so we have village as a rural human settlement, right? So village being in the country. Do you think it's worthwhile talking about this? There's a lot of tension around, it's, city of villages and creating urban villages. Do you think that's a point of conversation, or?
I mean, since you brought it up, we can certainly talk about it. I think there is certainly, I believe that fundamentally the village, as we're talking about it, of this supportive network of people who support each other's in all kinds of ways, including when it comes to taking care of children, when it comes to taking care of the elderly, when it comes to, coaching, mentoring, each other's support network. I believe that's a fundamental need, and it's something we've lost since the industrial age and even somewhat before that. So I think it will have to be brought back somehow in an urban context. I have much less of an idea of how it would work in an urban context, because just I've been focusing my thinking on how to move out of the city and create this in the city environment. But yes, I think it's certainly possible. I think it will come back. It is coming back, and people are working on it. But I have less knowledge and ideas about that. I would love to build, Village, the app, where, you can, the app that helps mediate this and makes it easier, because it's about connecting with people, being there for each other when we need each other. And I do believe that technology can play a role in helping with that.
Interesting. Apparently, I was reading the other day, just quickly, I'm not an expert, but apparently Bhutan, they're very much, it's urban villages, apparently all throughout Bhutan, the idea is, even in their capital city, I forget the name, maybe something worth looking into. But actually, I'm kind of thinking that maybe first creating country, rural villages is kind of the hard use case, right? So that's the most difficult use case. And so if we can, maybe there's more details, but maybe that's one kind of use case that possibly we can port into urban areas after that. But in urban areas, you have the problem of getting pulled by other cultures.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So I think because we are, what we're talking about is a significant change in lifestyle. I think creating, new cultures need a kind of protected environment where they can develop. And I think in a rural environment, and this is also why personally I'm interested in starting a completely new village, or actually taking over an abandoned village with no people and bringing in people interested in, because I think this gives you this kind of protective, sheltered, experimental environment where you can go really deeply in re-engineering how we, how this village, how we want this village to work. Moving into an existing village and trying to somehow live alongside the existing village community, or doing something in an urban environment. Like you said, there are very strong forces pulling you towards the status quo and the mainstream, and how things have been done for the past couple hundred years, which makes it, I think, much more challenging to develop something that's holistically, very new.
Yeah, interesting, right? So all of the cults, they've always gone rural, right? Which I think that it is good that we just open that one up too, right? Because isn't that kind of one of the things we're going to be trying to defend against?
It's very interesting, right? Where is the line between cult and tribe, right? Is our football supporters a cult or not? And since other people have brought this up, I've read, there is non-profit and other groups that work against cults, and they have a quite clear definition of what a cult is. When you have a group which pulls people away from their existing environment, right? Don't talk to your parents, don't talk to your friends, and so on and so forth. Which actually, if you think about it, right, like even if you join a football club or a football supporters club, you're going to be hanging out with those people more naturally. So there is some sort of a fuzzy line. But if it's, a fundamental thing, you're trying to pull people away from their existing network, That's one key point. And the other one is if you're preventing from people from leaving. So for example, I had a friend, maybe you shouldn't name with which, but one particular religious group, which is on the borderline of being cultish, a friend in university. And when she said she wanted to leave, she had people coming to her house regularly saying, you need to come back, you need to come back. It was intimidation, effectively. I think in the end had to call police and such. So there's a quite clear line, you know, of what is, there might be something fuzzy in between, but there is also quite clear of what a cult is. So certainly we have no interest in separating people from their families or pulling or preventing people from leaving. I think, in fact, if you create a village, this is a key thing that you need to think of from the start. How do people leave? Because you do not want to create, you know, many people like, oh, we're friends, you know, we're busy with other things, you know, it's all going to be great. But if you create a condition where it's not clear how somebody leaves, somebody's invested a lot of time, money, effort, right? And there's no clear way for them to, you know, get that out as they leave, you create a situation where people staying in a community because of fear of leaving or fear of economic loss, or, you know, if they give up what they've put in, they've got nowhere else to live. And I think that's a very unhealthy situation, so you never want to end up. So actually, I would really recommend that anybody who's building a new village has a clear path of how people exit. And I think, you know, for me, it's the health, it's the sign of a healthy and mature community or village or any organization where, you know, you have a celebration and a clear path for how people join and become members, but also a celebration and a clear path of how people choose to leave. And, you know, I think you spend a good amount of time with people. So, you know, there's lots of shared memories. Things change, people need to move on, and that's okay. And I think there should be a sad one, maybe in a way, but there should still be a celebration in the community. And for me, certainly it is the sign of mature, conscious people, where even if we separate as friends.
Yeah, definitely. I like what you were saying the other day about how kind of Japanese culture philosophies that, you know, even if we're not directly in contact with each other, you're still walking on the same earth that I am, right? So I don't want you to go be angry and bitter and to spread that around, right? Yeah. It's almost coming back to a selfish reasoning for why I want everybody to be happy, right?
Yeah. So this is, I would say, is a very clear and easy way to counteract becoming a cult, is to make it easy and healthy for people to leave when the time becomes for them to no longer be part of the community, for whatever reason that might be.
Cool. Yeah, that's important. That's good. I suppose also you might have been kind of, you know, not to go conspiratorial, but there's the conspiracy theory that the CIA created the term conspiracy theory, right? Similarly, it's probably, I'm just going to just guess wildly, that maybe it's many religions that have claimed that other groups are cults.
Oh yeah, it's always. I mean, it's quite clear from history, you know, the demonization of the other, you know, and it's heathen, devil, and all of that. We were just looking in Japan. I'm in Japan right now, and before the current rice and agricultural culture, there was the Jomon culture here. It was interesting because it was hunter-gatherer, plus they seem to have some food forests. They were farming chestnuts and stuff, and it's actually one of the oldest, I think the longest running culture ever on earth. They were around for somewhere 10 to 15, 16,000 years. Continuous culture. And they have a certain style of pottery and so on and so forth. And as far as we can tell, they did a lot of tattoos, facial tattoos. They had pierces, like pierces this big, you know, any modern primitive would be impressed. And then you look at the stories of from the current culture of Oni, which is the devil, demon, you know, and they're described as kind of looking like humans, but have been colored blue and other colors, which completely links of the tattoos. You can really trace, you know, how the new coming in culture demonizes and turns the old culture into devils, heathens, and outsiders in order to push them out.
Interesting.
But maybe we should go back and talk a little bit about, okay, so what is this Village 3.0 idea that we're talking about?
Perfect.
I think I really like the model that we developed together last year of talking about this hexagon and this six parts of what we're thinking about when we say a new kind of village.
Yeah.
So the first part, or I mean, it's a hexagon. There is no first in the sense of priority or order, but in the ease of talking about it, I think first key part is this idea of reinvented livelihoods, of looking in a new kind of post-work, work being actually also an industrial era term, way of making a living, including making a living online, working distributed teams. For example, like you work now, Aaron. Maybe you can say a few words about how you work, because you're a perfect example of this kind of new generation, next generation, reinvented livelihood person.
Yeah, totally. It's with a team back in Seattle, and it's just a small team of us, 5 of us. So, and then we manage to collaborate pretty well, and it's often more efficient, actually. So yeah, I think similar
so
to
you work online, right? You're in Spain now. The team is in Seattle. Is there an office? Have you ever had an office?
Technically we have an office because you're required to, but it's but that's confidential. But yeah, technically we have an office. But yeah, we've got a guy in Mexico City. We've got a guy in Rajasthan, India. We have people all over the place. So.
Wow. I didn't even know about some of those. So yeah, and this is exactly this freedom to work globally, irrespective of where you are on Earth, as long as there is decent internet, is what I think really enables this return to a rural kind of village whilst keeping your 21st century, modern professions and modern lifestyle. And actually, it's not just IT people or software developers or such. The number of jobs and amount of the different kinds of work that you can do online increases every day. And also, I think there is a growing possibility for craftsmen. There is, Etsy and a big revival of crafts, which I think is really wonderful. So you can work, have your studio somewhere, anywhere, whilst you sell to a global market. Similarly, for artists, it's becoming more and more possible to be part of the global economy whilst being actually physically present anywhere in the world. Also, travel has become much cheaper, which is a key enabler for this, cheaper, faster, and so on and so forth. So it's entirely realistic to every month or two go somewhere to a big city for the meetings that you do need to have in person. And we have this rise of distributed companies like yours, which are, from the start, location independent. It's not remote work in the sense that there is a central team somewhere and you're apart from it. No, it's a team and organization which is completely distributed around the world.
It's interesting, if I can hop in. I think that this is actually really, really crucial, right? Because I think that before we used to have a little bit of adverse selection for people that were trying to move to other places to start a new life or to go to a rural area, because it was people that were not, and maybe we still have this, but it was particularly people that were not able to succeed within their own communities. And so they were trying to leave because they didn't have that much to leave, right? They didn't have that much to lose. But now we're able to select for a completely different kind of person, because you'll no longer have people leaving their livelihood behind because they're able to take it with them, right? They're able to maintain, and there are many people that have, I mean, well, we have like the awesome examples, like the CEO of WordPress, who's amazingly successful. But outside of those are kind of the outliers. We have people that are actually quite successful working remotely. So you're no longer just going to get people that are kind of dropping out of society, not really participating in the global economy, things like this. We can actually select for a totally different path.
Exactly. It's people that want to move out of the city, not because they're unsuccessful or unhappy, but because they're very successful and very happy with their career, but their career is such that it enables them to live anywhere. So why should they live in the city? Cool. So that's the livelihood part. There's a lot more to explore in that area. I think we need to have a call or two, a conversation around that topic in particular. But let's maybe move on to the next key area, which I think is massively enables this new kind of village. And this is idea of reinventing learning, of moving away. One big challenge whenever you say, oh, let's move out to the countryside, to any parent or anybody with children, the first question you hear is, well, what about schools? And the exciting development there is, that's been happening over the past 40, 50 years, is people that are really exploring what it means and what is the environment that's really needed for learning. And is it really schools, teachers, grades, and things like this that foster learning? Or is this just one model that was relevant in the 19th century and it's something that we went through, but is actually not what's fundamentally needed and what's best for supporting learning of young people and old people? And as it turns out, there's many. There's democratic schools, there's Sudbury Valley model schools, there's many models that have been in development over the past, some for 100 years, some 40, 50 years, some for 20, 30 years. And there's a huge worldwide community of alternatives to school. This is now being hugely supported through the internet and the really wide access to all kinds of learning resources. Once you start looking at these ideas, it becomes immediately clear that, well, actually, no, you don't need state-run schools. And in fact, they're actually detrimental for many people to their learning process. And if you embrace these new ideas around learning, and I think if you design a community which supports these new learning models, you can actually come up with something that's much more powerful than the current orthodox state education systems. And of course, there's this whole idea where learning now is, nobody expects to finish their learning in high school or in university. We are living in a world which is about lifelong learning.
Perfect. So that's great. And so it's kind of another check for information technology enabling this in rural areas, right? So okay, livelihood, information tech, check. Yes. Learning, information tech, check. So what else?
I think both reinventing livelihoods, reinventing learning, it's both technologies. It's human technology, which I refer to this new way of organizing, new way of thinking, new way of doing things at the human level, and the computer and IT technology, which also supports it. I think you need both sides. Neither the hardware, software, mechanical technology can solve everything, nor just human technology. It's both of those working together that enable something truly new to emerge.
Totally. Design models.
And then the other idea, which I really see pushing and giving value to this new village model, is a emerging new view and understanding of what is needed for human health, for human thriving. We are realizing there is more and more hard research that shows that actually being in contact with nature, being able to have a walk through nature, being able to work in a garden, these kinds of things are actually quite critical to human health. You know, I look at the urban environment and, you know, the kind of modern working world, the, you know, long commutes and busy trains and so on and so forth. And I see a world which is becoming harsher and harsher, and thus making it harder and harder for more and more people to really live a healthy life. I think the epidemics we see of mental health problems and other problems are a sign of this. It's not that, you know, there are people that are crazy or depressed or whatever. We've created a world which pushes people that are even a little bit weak out, and, you know, makes them, you know, we've created a reality which makes more and more people unable to be happy whilst following the mainstream path.
Certainly.
So
environmental psychology is a growing area of research, actually, I'm sure.
Positive psychology, you know, really more and more research, you know, I think we're in this amazing time in history where we have access to so much of world's different philosophical and religious traditions, as well as really over the past 20 years, a much more solid understanding through anthropology, psychology, and other hard sciences of the human animal. So it's really hard to tell what makes a person happy, but the science for asking the right questions and doing research on this has gotten much better over the past 20 years. And much of it confirms what's already known through the traditional religious and philosophical traditions, that, you know, it's not money and possessions that make us happy. It's really good, healthy human relations.
So we kind of had a dark age during the 20th century with Freud doing lines.
I mean, I think it was one step in the learning journey. I'm actually not a psychologist. I don't even know how much of his thinking is kind of considered still useful today. Yeah. It was a step on our learning journey. But what I am excited about is the much more practical hard science kind of research that's been done over the past 20 years, which really, you know, and it reconfirms many of the traditions. I don't think, you know, and the great thing is, you know, each of the traditions, whether Buddhism or Christianity or Islam or the traditional religions or the Greek philosophers, all of them had a good part of the mosaic of the picture of what it is required for human happiness. I don't think any of them had the full picture, but we are now going into a period where, having access to all of these wisdom traditions and modern science, we can put together a much more complete picture of human happiness, of being human than it's ever been put together before. And from my reading of the research is that it points to, we need nature, we need community, you know, we need a supportive human environment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So coming back to what we're going into right now, we're talking about, right? So we've kind of proposed this hexagonal framework, right? So six areas, which, you know, is basically what you're saying. These are the elements that we see that are required for a happy life. And if I remember back, you know, I have this vague memory of reading Aristotle. The first time that we came up with this idea, it reminded me of, you know, people have said this before. We didn't just, we're kind of reinventing the wheel. Who's this? Yeah, so, okay, so yeah, as you were saying, people have talked about this forever, philosophers. I have this vague memory of Aristotle saying something similar to what we've kind of cooked up here. And in no way is this hexagonal framework, these six elements, and it's actually very basic. And actually I think that maybe it's useful to point that out. And, you know, we're just trying to create an investigation into how to go about this. We don't,
yes.
We're just kind of saying, okay, it seems like learning, livelihood, people, place, health, purpose, seems like these are probably the elements of a good life. Now, what are the details? How does it all fit together? Yeah. In no way do we have a prescription here. We more so are just pointing in a direction and saying, hey, this is a totally based, seems like that's kind of the way to go. And Aristotle's been talking about it for a long time. It's been around, right?
It's a framework. It's a framework for conversation. I think for these are important topics if you want to create a village for the 21st century. I think what my feeling is and what I would like to propose is that you need to have some sort of an answer to each of these areas. What these answers are, this is what I hope we're going to have conversation going forward with many different people, people building different villages, trying to bring existing villages to survive and thrive in the 21st century. So that's the framework of the 6 things. You know, the goal which we've proposed for Village 3.0 is how to create thriving human life. And I know many people will object to the word thriving human life, but I don't think that without thriving nature, thriving ecosystem, and thriving everything else, the humans will be thriving either. On the other hand, I also, having looked at history, my understanding of the human animal is such that if we aren't thriving, we will not allow anybody else around us to thrive. So the environmental destruction and all of these other things will continue as long as we don't have a society, a system which allows the people to thrive. Because when people aren't thriving, they are greedy, they do not think long term, they're not able to take care of others if they don't feel like they themselves are in a happy, thriving spot. So this is why I emphasize thriving human life. But I think this is the beginning. This is the conversation around these ideas that we would like to have. How do we design a village? Livelihoods, learning, health, the people systems. How do we design the place? Because I think there's a lot to be done to create, healthier natural environments, happier natural environments, places where there isn't cars going through quickly every few minutes, thus causing danger to any children, elderly, or anybody else. We've ended up, if you look around the world, there's many systems which we've kind of ended up and stumbled into, which do not seem like the ideal best that we can do.
Definitely. And then purpose, right? That's kind of the special
purpose,
sauce.
The big question, yes, how does the higher, why are we here? How does the question of spirituality and these kinds of ideas fit into the overall equation? And there actually I have many less answers, but I really look forward to having many great conversations, because I think this is also something that needs to be thought about, and something that to really create deep human society, deep human community, you really need to have a strong purpose and a strong core of values, and some sort of higher something, spirituality or higher purpose ideas that bind the community together.
Yep, that's great. Okay, so maybe now I'm thinking, okay, how do we pull this together, right? So we're kind of proposing this idea of Village 3.0. You, me, and a few other people came together to kind of explore this idea. And now we're trying to figure out, how do we create value out of all of these collaborations that are starting to spark now, right? Are we creating a knowledge base here? Are we all going to go write a book together?
I would like to invite everybody to conversation first. So I would like to continue these kinds of video conversations, exploring the general idea with different people and different parts in more depth with many people. And I think as we continue these conversations, it will become clear, what it is what we need to do. Of course, a book would be great. Of course, wiki resource space would be great. We definitely need real world meetups as well. And we're starting to work on that, hopefully a future video on that. But I think for now, this video, I would like everybody who's watching it to consider this an invitation to conversation, to come in and jump in and talk with us about these ideas.
Awesome. And maybe I'll chip in that I think that part of what we're realizing is that this is going to take a long time, right? We're looking at 5, 10 years here of continually developing this idea. Hopefully, knock on wood, that we survive that long, right? But the point being that, yeah, you don't just, it's not as simple as, oh yeah, we're going to go write a book. It's going to take a long time for the story to unfold. And it's not just about us, it's more so about how is humanity going to rebuild its communities given major shifts, technology being one of the main ones. So yeah, the kind of scale of what we're doing here is,
Yeah.
and we don't own it either. It's an idea.
Yeah, we don't own this, and we hope that it's a set of ideas we invite everybody to experiment and play with, and let's play together. For me, I'm pretty clear now this is my lifetime project. So I'm going to be working on it for however long this lifetime lasts. On the plus side, whilst I can see now it's going to take many years for this to develop and become more common, I do feel that it is inevitable. The way I, see the different arrows of different alternative movements and developments moving, it seems to me that it's inevitable that at least some people will move in this direction. I certainly hope that with this Village.Builders organization we're building, we can make it easier, faster, and more fun for more people to converge and build the ideal village for them. But I do feel that whether we do it or don't do it, it's something that's going to emerge in the world naturally.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, that's great. I happened to catch you said, at least for this lifetime. So do you believe in reincarnation? Did you let that slip there?
I definitely don't. This lifetime has been a lot of work. It's going to be a lot more work. I hope to finish it at this one. But,
Okay.
I do want to do it.
I
do want to do it right. And really, I see this as the contribution that I can make to humanity's progress. However small or big what we do here might be, I do feel that we are making a contribution towards moving towards a more positive and happier future for many people. I don't think, maybe not necessarily, probably cities are going to be it. I don't think everybody is going to move out into the countryside. I don't know if it will be for 0.1% of the population, 1%, or like 5 or 10. But I think for those people who do need nature, who really do need the community as part of their, basic, the basic makeup, the way they were born, I think for those people, it's going to be really amazing.